Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our Zoom meeting. Our speaker this evening is Father Marius Zerafa, and the title of his talk is Caravaggio. We are very honoured and truly fortunate to have such a distinguished speaker to talk about Caravaggio. Father Marius joined the Dominican Order in 1945 and later came to Oxford, spending 3 years there. He has since studied widely in Rome, in the Sorbonne, and at the University of Florence. He was elected to the Royal Historical Society in London and has also received awards both in France and Russia. He was co-founder of the Malta Soviet Friendship Society. He returned to Malta and was responsible for setting up the National Museum of Fine Arts in Valletta and other museums in Malta and Gozo. He will be telling us how he was involved in the recovery of the painting of St. Jerome, also by Caravaggio. During his illustrious career, Father Marius has been invited to lecture in many countries and helped organize numerous art exhibitions in London, Paris, Moscow, Palermo. Father Marius, who lives in Malta, teaches sacred art in Rome and is a world expert on the artist Caravaggio. Caravaggio was born in Italy in 1571 and died in July 1610. He was known for his quick temper. He painted some of the world's masterpieces, but had to flee Italy after he killed a man in a fight. He was offered sanctuary by the Knights of St. John in Malta, where he painted the beheading of John the Baptist, for which he was inducted as a knight. This wonderful painting is in St. John's Co-Cathedral in Valletta. Before we start the talk, can I just mention a few points, please? Can I please ask that you mute your microphones during the talk? If you have poor reception, please turn off your video. Father Marius's talk this evening will last about 45 minutes. And following the talk, there will be an opportunity for questions. But please, no questions until the end. If you want to send in a question during the talk, please use your chat button. The talk will be recorded and uploaded to our website. Your attendance will be taken as consent to be potentially included in the recording. I would also add that there is a new talks archive page on our website, which has direct links to each talk. You might also like to know there is a link to the YouTube channel, which is a good way of advertising the Friends of Valletta. As you know, we kindly ask you to donate £5 or more at your discretion for attending the talk. We shall forward a proportion of your donations to Dinlat Helwa, which is Malta's equivalent to the National Trust, for ongoing conservation work. And I would like to thank all those who have already donated their £5. That's enough of my points, and I would now like to hand over to Father Marius for his talk this evening. Father Marius.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm lucky to have two friends here with me, Dr. Vassallo and Mr. Joven Mitzi. They've helped me to, because I was born in 1929 AD. That's practically in the Industrial Revolution. So I'm totally hopeless when it comes to working my computer. What I propose to do is to give a brief history of the life of Caravaggio. He had a very rich criminal record. I had 3 biographies. One of the biographers was his bitter enemy, and Baglione. So that is why we know all the naughty things about Caravaggio. I will speak about his contribution to art. He was a very revolutionary artist. He changed the trend of art. Speak about his realism, his use of light, especially the luce di cantina. And then I hope I'll have time to say something about the stealing and the return and restoration of the St. Jerome and the beheading that we have in Valletta. So, and I'll show you the slides. I'll comment briefly on the slides, and then I'll hope to have some questions at the end, because that is when one can come really to deal with the subject. Now, Caravaggio was called, in fact, Michelangelo. He was born on St. Michael's Day in Milan, but he always signed his name as Michelangelo da Caravaggio, because that's the tiny place next to Milan where his family lived. His parents, members of his family, died during the famous plague of Milan, described by in the Promessi Sposi. He was set with an artist as a tutor, Simon Peter Zano, who prided himself to have been the pupil of Titian, which explains the rich colors in the paintings of Caravaggio. Some of the details could have been done by Giorgione. And now then he went to Rome. He worked with artists. He painted heads and still lifes. Got involved in quarrels with people and so on. As I said, he was arrested at least 7 times, throwing stones at the landlady for knocking down the roof of his room and so on, throwing artichokes at the waiters, all sorts of things. Well, the worst thing is when he killed a young man, Ranuccio Tomassoni. They were playing Palamaglio, a sort of tennis. And so he was outlawed from Rome. And he got the idea of coming to Malta because he thought that by joining the Knights of Malta, he would get a chance to be forgiven and so return to Rome. There were problems about his being received in the order because he didn't belong to the nobility and he didn't have a clean sheet. The Grand Master had to write to the Pope to get a special dispensation for this one time, and the dispensation came back for this one time. You can accept him in the order. The order were obviously very proud. They said, just as Greece honored Apelles, so Malta would honor Caravaggio. Then he got into trouble again. He had problems with his senior knight, and he was locked up in St. Angelo awaiting trial. While he was awaiting trial, he managed to escape. Obviously, he had help. He had contacts with important families, and they helped him to escape from St. Angelo and go to Sicily. Now, leaving the island without the permission of the Grand Master was the greatest sin a knight could commit. So he was expelled from the order, tanquam membrum fetidum et putridum, cut off as a stinking member. It's like when a priest leaves the diocese without permission, and he's considered to have left the church. Okay, so that was his main fault with the knights. So he went to Sicily, where he met a friend of his, Mario Militi, another artist, who got some commissions for him in Sicily. He painted in Syracuse, painted in Messina, then tried to go up again to Naples, where again he was commissioned to do some very important works. There he was cut up by the knights and left for dead. In fact, his death was announced, but he survived, and he wanted to go back to Rome. He couldn't go into the sort of papal states because he was still an outlaw. He was carrying some paintings with him, which he was hoping to present to the Cardinal Borghese, the nephew of the Pope, who was crazy about his paintings. He was rather unlucky. He got arrested by mistake. They both left without him with the paintings. He rushed up to Port Ercole, and there he died, badly as he had lived. It was announced, okay? So he had a very short life, but he managed to produce some great masterpieces, which I'll show you. And as I said, he was a revolutionary in art in the sense that he didn't sort of prepare drawings, but he produced some very important works after he had been an apprentice, after he had been working for minor artist, when he met a cardinal in Rome, Cardinal del Monte, who got him a very important commission for the French National Church in Rome. And there he painted the life of Saint Matthew, which we will see. Okay. Okay. Now, normally I use this chart. I've been using it for 50 years. It helps to show the place of Caravaggio in the history of art. On the left, you've got the dates. The circles indicate the importance of the artist, and the lines indicate the artists that had some influence, and then the influence that Caravaggio had on others. Okay, if you are recording this, you can go through it. And then, as you can see, the names are grouped, they are in groups, because there's the Florentine school, the Venetian school, that were rather different. Okay, and you'll notice that Caravaggio stands on his own. He didn't belong to a school. He was obviously influenced by Venice, all right? And he had great admiration for Michelangelo, as we will see in his works. And you can see that he influenced Velázquez, influenced the Dutch, influenced Rubens. Okay, so that's a central place that he occupies in the history of art.
Amazing, actually.
Now,
Yes.
now, this is Caravaggio as seen by contemporaries, by Leone. It's a pastel portrait that we have that represents him as a calm person. And this is a way, this is a picture of how he saw himself. This is a self-portrait in the painting in San Luigi dei Francesi, where he represents the martyrdom of Saint Matthew, and he represents himself as a spectator in the audience. Again, this is an important painting that he was carrying with him when he died, and it represents David and Goliath. Every artist would be proud to represent himself as a David, but he represented himself as a Goliath. He was obviously asking for mercy because he was hoping that he would receive pardon from the Pope. In fact, on the sword, there are a number of initials which seem to, can be interpreted as humilitas omnia vincit. I mean, humility, penance will acquire me sort of forgiveness. Okay, again, a lovely, lovely painting in Ireland, Christ taken in the garden. This was in the Jesuits' common room. It was restored and came out so well that now it's in the National Gallery on permanent loan in Dublin. And you'll see on the right, there's Caravaggio, a portrait of Caravaggio, and he's holding a lantern to the face of Christ. It's a lovely painting. The face of Judas practically touching Christ, the hands, twined hands and so on, the light on the armor. I think it's a good example of this style of Caravaggio. Okay, and this is his last painting in Naples, where he represented again another martyrdom, and he painted himself at the back there, just sort of as a part of the painting. Yes. Okay, again, this is a painting which few people have ever seen. It's painted on the ceiling of the studio of Cardinal del Monte, who was very involved in alchemy. So he wanted to represent the well, Neptune and you know, the elements and so on. And they're all self-portraits of Caravaggio, obviously done in a mirror. This is in the Palazzo Ludovisi near the American Embassy in Rome. Yes. This is one of the many portraits that were made of him as an illustrious artist. We have some copies even in Malta. Yes. Now, this is considered to be his first painting. It's the Sic Bacchus. People say it's his self-portrait. He painted this after leaving hospital, had been in hospital for some time, probably was kicked by a horse. And we see how this subject of the god of wine and so on, but he represents it in a very sort of down-to-earth, very realistic way. We already have the table leading into the picture, which it becomes a common element in his painting. Yes, this is a more elaborate, again, the same subject, far more. This is in Florence, and you see the still life. It was very good at painting fruit and so on, the reflection in the wine and so on. As I said, he brings down the mythological subject into a sort of everyday subject. This is in Florence, yes. This is interesting. This is his basket of fruit. He was a realist. Being a realist doesn't mean he was a sort of photographer. Quite often, his subjects were meant to have a sort of a moral, like Hogarth, no, trying to teach. And this is meant to represent vanity. So you get the fruit, the lovely apple and so on, and then the rotten fruit and so on, which means all that lives must die, passing from nature to eternity. This is in Milan. It's quite famous, very realistic. And as I said, it's meant to teach with something that is quite common with Caravaggio's pictures. Yes. Again, this is the young lover touching the rose, which is a symbol of love, but there's a hidden snake or something, all right, biting him. So he withdraws it. So you get all this drama of the iket nunc, the instant that he tries to clutch the rose, but in fact he is bitten. And you see this element of surprise on his face, and the effect all obtained by means of light, contrast of light and shade, yes. It's more obvious in this painting, the famous Medusa, which was meant to be a part of the armor in Florence. And you see the open mouth, it's like Munch, you know, the shriek, the bulging eyes, the blood just shooting out, and the snakes representing the Medusa. Anybody cutting the head would be sort of turned, anybody facing it would be turned into stone, but they're seen in a mirror and cut off. So you see, get the sense of drama, all right, those frightened eyes and so on. Yes. Whereas this is completely unusual for Caravaggio. This is a repose on the flight to Egypt. It's in Rome, where you get Saint Joseph holding the music score for the angel to play the violin. A very realistic Saint Joseph, a lovely angel, could be a Botticelli with very flowing lines, a very tender Madonna and Child, and the landscape that's very Venetian. It could be a Giorgione, right? Yes, this is in the Doria Pamphili Museum in Rome. This is a concert with a self-portrait and probably a portrait of Mario Minniti, the Sicilian artist who helped him in Sicily. It represents a concert, a lovely texture, that red texture. It could be a Titian, beautifully painted. This is in the Metropolitan Museum in Rome. Okay, whereas this is another lute player. It's at the Hermitage. He liked this and he repeated it. There's a more or less a repetition of it at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. A lovely flower piece. For some time, this was called the girl with the lute. Now it's a boy and so on. But you get that still life, the fruit, and the instruments on the table leading into the figure. All right, lovely contrast of light. Again, a lovely group, cheaters. They're playing cards, and you can see they're cheating. He's got a card hidden behind his back. There's somebody who's sort of reporting what that man is holding. His glove is slightly torn, so he can feel the cards he wants. This is a lovely picture, full of light. It's in Fort Worth in Texas. It was very popular and has been copied over and over again. Lots of copies. Again, this is the famous a girl reading his fortune of this young man and pulling out his ring. So you see, it's not just a meeting of two lovers, but it's to warn us against sort of this girl's smiling at him, and at the same time taking off his ring. This was a picture presented. It's at the Louvre. It's said to have been presented by Bernini when he went to design the Louvre. There's another version of it in Rome. And again, as I said, it's meant to show, to teach. It's a morality picture, yes. This is a picture in Detroit, Mary and Martha, with a mirror that we know that Caravaggio possessed. Lovely texture, lovely still life there, the details and so on, and the strong light coming on the face of Martha. So this is his first important painting. This is in the Chapel of St. Matthew in the French church in Rome. There was a cardinal called Matthew. He ordered some statues which were never delivered. So Del Monte, Cardinal Del Monte, recommended Caravaggio to do the painting. So he did a St. Matthew with an angel. There's the angel inspiring St. Matthew, and he's counting on his fingers, probably because the Gospel of St. Matthew starts with the genealogy of Christ. Actually, this is the picture you will see if you go to the church. In fact, he had painted a previous one, which was far superior, I think, but it was removed because it lacked decoro. After the Council of Trent had insisted on art being ancilla theologia, the handmaiden of theology, but it put great emphasis on decoro. It had to be decent. So having St. Matthew with bare feet and obviously illiterate, the angel is moving his fingers and so on, was considered infradeg, okay? So the painting was removed, it went to Berlin, and unfortunately it was lost in the last war, okay? And the most important painting at the time was the Calling of St. Matthew, which is on this side of the altar. And St. Matthew, who was a tax collector, so he's in a tavern. There's a man next to him counting the money, and our Lord comes in, points his finger at him. You can see it's a quotation from Michelangelo on the creation of Adam, and he's saying, "Come and follow me." And St. Matthew saying, "Who, me?" Because obviously as a tax collector, he was considered as a sinner, okay? This was meant not only as a Bible, it was sort of in the French church. It was important for the French community in Rome, because at that time, the King of France had just returned to the Catholic Church. So for them, the conversion of St. Matthew, in a way, represented the conversion of France. It's interesting that after he finished the figure of Christ, he painted on top of it the picture of Saint Peter. The idea was to uphold the Catholic theory that grace comes through Saint Peter to the church. So it's quite an important painting, Venetian in color. And you'll see the important thing, what we call the luce di cantina. He painted in a dark room, and he had a hole in the wall. I'll show you a picture showing it, with the light coming in, so that the ray of light would sort of pick out the features and the group he represented. And quite often, as in this case, I think it's meant to represent the light of grace. So this is what made him famous. After that, he painted also the martyrdom of St. Matthew. I showed you already his self-portrait. You see it here on the left. And it's interesting. Try to remember this picture, and I'll show you what's underneath. This is an X-ray of the same painting, and it shows the executioner on top, and you'll see the outline where he was originally. the choir boy is on the right-hand corner. Originally, he was down there, and there was a figure of a man reading the Bible. So this happened because unlike most artists who produced a drawing and then squared it up and transferred it to the canvas, with Caravaggio, he would just start painting, and if he didn't like it, he just painted on top of it. Okay, so this is quite interesting. It shows how he changed his composition completely as he went along, right? So these three pictures come from the church of San Luigi dei Francesi. Okay, and as I said, these are the pictures that made him famous in Rome. Okay, after that, he was commissioned to do 2 other paintings for the Church of Santa Maria del Popolo in Rome, and he painted a conversion of St. Paul. He had an earlier version, which I'll show you, which wasn't approved. So he did this one where he simplified. He used the, sometimes I refer to this as the conversion of the horse, because he gives all this importance to the horse. What he was looking for was a surface to take light, like the Impressionists, you know, when Renoir wanted a model whose skin would take the light well. So he uses the body of the horse to take that light, and he's got this lovely circular composition, concentrating on sort of, and you have St. Paul there on the ground, absolutely hopeless after on the way to Damascus. Before he painted this painting, he had produced this more elaborate one with our Lord coming down from heaven and an angel practically holding him back, soldiers and a landscape. But this was painted on wood. Then it was sent to Spain, and eventually it has been restored. But this is the first version that was replaced by the simpler and more obvious one. This is a lovely painting, the Sacrifice of Isaac. Again, you get this idea of the iket nunc, catching the moment that Isaac is being sacrificed and the angel just holding him back. And you get that lovely landscape at the back that could easily be a Giorgione, a Venetian artist. Okay, and this is one of my great favorites. This is the Doubting Thomas in Berlin, and you've got this concentration. You see the dark background, the light falling on these figures, Christ taking hold of the hand of St. Peter and pushing it into his wound, all right? And you get the concentrated gaze of the other apostles. So there's an immediacy, the message. He gives the message, he doesn't lose himself in sort of silly details. You get all the attention is focused on those 2 hands, the hand of Christ pushing the hand of Thomas into his wound. A lovely, lovely painting. Again, and another great painting, which I'm sure you know, it's at the National Gallery in London. It represents a great episode, the Supper at Emmaus, Christ meeting with the 2 pilgrims there, and they hadn't heard about his resurrection or anything. And they say, oh, the day is coming to a close. You must come in and have a meal with us. And as he blessed the food, they recognize him in the blessing of the bread. So this is very beautifully composed. There's the table leading in to create depth, and the right hand of Christ jutting out of the picture. You have the figure on the left-hand side jumping out of his Savonarola chair with the elbow, with the white patch, so it practically hits you in the face. You've got the pilgrim with the shell, with arms stretched out, okay, and the lovely face of Christ as a young man, as he was represented in the catacombs, and the waiter casting a shadow, so the face of Christ is full of light and it really comes out. And a strange thing, which you'll notice a number of paintings, the basket with fruit practically falling off the table. You have the same thing in the crucifix in the Saint Jerome painting. Okay, the idea, I think, is to make, he tried to make the spectator feel as if he's participating in that meal. All right, so that's the arms of the pilgrim are equidistant. All right, this is a very dramatic, a very colorful, lovely, lovely painting. He repeated the same subject 7 years later. This is not dramatic. This is more sort of meditative. You get the same personages, a lovely, lovely figure of a face of Christ. This is at the Brera in Milan. And again, you see the concentrated gaze of the spectators on the blessing hand of Christ. Okay, it's a lovely, lovely painting. This is I showed this just to show that this is love triumphant. As I said, he spoke badly of all the artists, but he had a great veneration for Michelangelo. And this is obviously a quotation from one of the nudi in the Cappella Sistina, a lovely still life with all the musical instruments and the wings that we read so much about in his biography. Yes, this is another great painting. This is the Madonna of Loreto. Obviously, most of these Madonnas are portraits of his girlfriend, Lena, la donna di Caravaggio che sta a Piazza Navona, the girlfriend of Caravaggio, who stood always in Piazza Navona, which means she was a prostitute, okay? But it's a lovely Madonna. She's turning around, and the two pilgrims, there's a lovely diagonal line, a lovely texture on the upper part of the dress of the Madonna, and lovely light. This caused a lot of trouble because people objected to having bare feet in their faces. It went against the decoro of the Council of Trent. Even Tintoretto had trouble with the Council of Trent when he painted the Last Supper with musicians and monkeys and so on. So he was arrested by the Inquisition, which wasn't so strong in Venice. And they let him off because he said, I'm an artist. You can't take artists seriously. They're all mad. But he had to change the subject. Instead of the Last Supper, now it's called the Feast in the House of Levi. Okay, that's a lovely, lovely painting. If you go to Rome, you must see it. It's in Sant'Agostino near Piazza Navona. Obviously, this is his greatest, the painting that was always accepted as a masterpiece. It's the Deposition. This was painted for the Church of St. Philip Neri. Then it was taken by the French to Paris, Napoleon. And when it returned to Rome, it was taken by the Vatican. So you can see this at the Vatican. Again, you see a quotation of Michelangelo, the hand of the dead Christ, the Nicodemus, probably a portrait of Michelangelo with his elbow jutting out. You've got the tombstone jutting out of the painting, the realism. Then there's the morality, there's the plant growing underneath the tombstone, probably a symbol of life after death. You've got the Mary Magdalene, we'll see her again in another famous painting. And you have the Orante, the praying man, as in the catacombs, they're always represented with uplifted arms. Okay, this is that was a great. Now, one of the many Saint Jeromes, he painted young men as Saint John the Baptist and old men as Saint Jerome. This one is in the Borghese Gallery, beautifully painted. You've got the figure of the saint, and then you've got the still life, the skull. He's translating the Bible, and then a splash of white. When you see the original painting, it's as if he just wiped his brush to produce that lovely piece of cloth there. Again, this is an important painting. This is was painted for the Vatican. It's Saint Anne. Saint Anne was the patron saint of the Palafrieri, the man who used to carry the Pope in those days on the throne and so on. And they probably pretended to have expected to have a glamour girl. Instead, he painted this old hag, and it was removed a few days after it was placed in the Vatican. Again, it's the portrait of Lena, and it's interesting. He's representing the old sort of prophecy: I will raise a woman and she shall crush your head to the snake. So you've got the foot of the Madonna on the head of the snake and the foot of Christ on top. What is very interesting in this painting is that you get a flash of a ray of light coming from the top left. And that is probably what he had in his studio, a dark room and a ray of light coming out and just picking out the figures and the groups. Okay, this is in the Borghese Gallery, where most of his paintings are. Again, another scandal. He was asked by a church in Trastevere, across the Tiber, to paint the death of the Virgin. Now, normally they didn't paint the death, they called it the Dormitio, the sleeping of the Virgin. Instead, he painted a girl, and the rumor was that it was a prostitute that had committed suicide by jumping in the Tiber. So obviously this caused quite a scandal. It was removed. Fortunately, Rubens was in Rome at the time, and he had it exhibited. Then it went to Milan. I think at one time it even belonged to Charles I of England. At the moment, it is at the Louvre. And it's not an easy painting, but it's got some lovely details. The Mary Magdalene there next to her, this dead woman there with the brown habit of the Carmelites, and the group of old men sort of weeping over the death of the Madonna. And then that huge red sort of curtain that creates this sense of drama. Okay. Now, coming to Malta, as soon as he came to Malta, obviously he had to thank the Grand Master. He did his portrait wearing a suit of armor, not his own, but we still have the suit of armor in the armory in Valletta, Grand Master Vignacco with his page boy. And then another painting which he did in Malta, which was discovered fairly recently in Florence, in the Pitti Gallery. And at first it was described as a portrait of Vignacco. Now we know that in fact it's most probably Cavalier Martelli, a very important character in the order. And you see Caravaggio makes full use of the 8-pointed cross. It's or a flash of light, almost like a butterfly. And the beautiful head, looks like almost like a Franz Hals, beautifully modeled. And then a faint hand holding the sword and a hand saying the rosary. Another painting which he did in Malta is this sleeping Cupid. It's not a pleasant picture at all, but as I said, it's beautifully modeled, and he probably modeled it on a dead child, which he would have seen quite often in the sacred infirmary. This was painted for another knight, Cavalier Dantella, who was so proud of it, he took it back to Florence. In fact, it is still in Florence. But if you go to Santa Croce, you see a palace by the side of Santa Croce, which this palace belonged to this Cavalier Dantella. And he had a copy of the sleeping Cupid painted on the facade of his palace. The idea was, again, this is a morality picture. Every knight would have a painting of St. John or a skull, or the sleeping Cupid, which sort of told them, look, now that you've taken the order, no more wine, women, or song, okay? At the back of it actually is very interesting. there's written Dipinto a Malta 1608, painted in Malta in 1608. And it's interesting also that Caravaggio sort of cleaned his brushes on the back of this painting. Okay, yes. There was great interest in this sleeping Cupid because Michelangelo had produced a sleeping Cupid, which is now lost. So it was taken as if he was competing with Michelangelo himself. Okay, now we get to his masterpiece in St. John's, which he did, which he presented to the order instead of paying the sum of money that they usually paid. It was painted in the oratory, which at the time was just a bare room, completely undecorated. And it was just this painting. And it was meant in the oratory, the young knights met and they had the order explained to them, and they were sort of warned that they were to die for the faith and so on and so forth. So they chose this subject of the beheading of St. John. It's a lovely composition. You've got the semicircular composition, starting with the girl, the old lady, and then ending with the executioner. The circular movement re-echoed by the semicircle of the archway, and there's a direct vertical that goes down following the stonework, the hand of St. John, of the executioner, onto the head of St. John. Now here St. John has been beheaded already, there's the sword, and the executioner is finishing it off. So he's got that knife, it was called the Misericordia, to finish the job, all right? It's a sort of drama. This was painted more or less the year that Shakespeare wrote King Lear, okay? So it's action on a stage. He worked with such speed, we are told, that the right-hand side of the painting is unfinished. You just have the red preparation for the painting. Whereas in the figure of Salome, you've got very strong brushwork. Okay, so the action is on the left of the painting, like the Night Watch in Rembrandt, but then he inserted those two prisoners, so the attention always returns to the central action on the stage. And you have this old lady. It's like a chorus in a Greek play. She's interpreting. I mean, they are just doing something that they were doing all the time. Whereas there's this old lady sort of expressing horror at the drama happening on the stage. This is the largest painting by Caravaggio. It's the only one that he signed. And he signed it with the blood coming out of the neck of St. John. And he signed it as Frater F. Brother Michelangelo. Okay, probably it's taken from the idea of paintings of St. Peter Martyr, the Dominican who was assassinated, and with his blood he wrote Credo, I believe. This painting was very popular in Lombardy, so Caravaggio probably must have seen it. Okay, so this is what made him famous in Malta. He did it during his first year as a novice, and probably he signed it. He identified himself with St. John. In the Bible, it says St. John used to wear camel skin, whereas here he's wearing sheep's clothing as a sacrificial animal, okay? And Caravaggio must have identified himself with St. John because he himself was under sentence of death when he painted it. But he was so proud that he had achieved knighthood that he signed Frater, brother, member of the order. That's the old lady. Some people say he couldn't paint without a model. In fact, we'll see that he repeated this old lady when he painted in Sicily. We don't know what he took with him from Malta. He obviously didn't take this old lady. So he must have this fantastic memory that he could reproduce the same face and figures. Yes, this is a lovely Annunciation, which is in Nancy, probably painted in Malta and sold to some French merchants who took it to. It's a lovely painting, but it's in a very bad state as a painting. Yes. And now we come to our Saint Jerome. This was painted for a knight, Cavalier Malaspina. You see his crest on the right-hand corner. He left his property, obviously, to the order, and then it was put up. He's buried in the chapel, in the chapel of Italy in St. John's, and the painting was there for many, many years. Okay, so again, you see the table leading in. You get this lovely head, beautifully modeled. He's translating the Bible. He's got the inkpot and the pen. There's the meditating on the skull. There's the stone that he used to beat himself with. And there's the crucifix, rather strange, as I said about the supper at Emmaus. The crucifix is practically falling off the table. Actually, by gravity, it should fall off the table. Okay, so when you see the painting, you feel as if you see the table leading in, you feel as if you are intruding on the meditation of Saint Jerome. After he left Malta, he changed his style. As he gives a lot of importance to the background, and he uses broken color. You almost see Rembrandt here already. So this is the burial of Santa Lucia. He had been to visit the catacombs there, and he reproduced the sad scene with these two huge men. So you're projected in towards that dead figure at the back. Again, in this raising of Lazarus, figure of Christ, very much like very solid, very realistic. The men sort of closing their noses and so on, and this dead figure, it is said that he asked to have a dead body so he could produce it realistically. Yes. And then there's this lovely, lovely painting in Palermo, which he did not paint in Palermo. This was almost certainly imported from Rome, and you can see it's very different from the style in the other two pictures that we see in Messina and so on. This was unfortunately stolen by the mafia some years before ours. And it's in the church in Palermo. It used to be in the church of St. Lawrence in Palermo. So he's got this young lady, Our Lady and St. Joseph, St. Lawrence, St. Francis, and the lovely angel flying about. It's a great, great painting. At one time, it was said by the mafia that by one of the pentiti, they were called, they were people who collaborated with the police. They said that they left the painting in a barn and it was eaten up by rats. In fact, it wasn't, obviously, the mafia and stupid. And recently, they've decided that it is in Switzerland, and the Italian parliament set up a committee to sort of study how they can sort of really trace where it is in Switzerland and try to get it back. A lot of documents, manuscripts that you probably saw in our public library. This is Vignacourt. There's the letter of the Grand Master to the Pope asking for a dispensation. There's a letter from the Pope saying, okay. And then there's this note by Vignacourt, the Grand Master, saying it's the duty of the monarch to give praise where it is due. And he says, just as Greece honored Apelles, so Malta wants to honor Caravaggio. Okay, it's rather strange that after a year he would be expelled from the order, tanquam membrum fetidum et putridum, as a stinking member. But at that time he was still very, very popular and considered as a great genius. Yes, this is the letter from the Pope to the Grand Master, from the Grand Master to the Pope to ask for a dispensation. Now we come to our strange, eventful history of our Caravaggio. The Saint Jerome used to be in the chapel of Italy, very high up. People could hardly see it. And then somebody had the brilliant idea of opening a museum attached to St. John's. And we had an Italian expert from Naples who did sort of supervised the works. He insisted on moving the St. Jerome to the museum. And he placed it in a room. I didn't like it at all. It was on a room on its own with a pink curtain at the back and the Prussian blue carpet in front of it. Now, what happened was that he wanted to offer it as an omaggio to the museum. And then something very unfortunate happened towards the end of the year, 29 December 84, when most of the staff were away. 3 men went in, put a chain across the corridor with a notice work in progress. They lowered the painting, cut it off the frame, and walked out with it. That was on the 29th December 84. You can see the horrible sort of salmon pink curtain and the Prussian blue carpet, which the Neapolitan expert insisted on putting there. Anyhow, so for 8 long months, we heard absolutely nothing. And then 2 years late, in 86, 24th of November, a young man came to the priory, knocked at my door. He asked for Father Zerafa, and he handed me an envelope with personal written on it. I asked him who sent it. He said it's from Mr. Borch. Everybody in Malta is called Mr. Borch. And they had a cousin who had just lost their son at the hospital. They gave him the wrong type of blood. And I noticed that there was something inside the envelope. So I thought that he was sort of giving me some sort of memento of his son. So I thanked him. He left. I opened the envelope. There was another envelope inside, and there was a note, and there was a tape. And there was a note saying, Father, do not open this envelope until you have listened to the tape and see that when you listen to the tape, you are on your own. Obviously, the first thing I did, I opened the envelope, and inside the envelope, there was a Polaroid picture with the stolen Caravaggio, obviously cut off the stretcher, obviously damaged, and with a coffee pot on it. Okay, then I listened to the tape. It was quite frightening. I still have it. It's in Maltese. He said, we've got the Caravaggio. We tried to sell it in Italy. Now we're trying to send it to America. If you're interested, we want £500,000 Maltese pounds, Maltese lire, but you are not to tell the police. He insisted on this. Otherwise, we'll blow up St. John's. We'll do this. Quite frightening. Quite frightening. Anyhow, so he said, he gave me a password. He said, Merisi, that's the name of Caravaggio, probably tried to impress me. He said, next week I'll phone you up. In fact, he phoned me up the next day. And I said, yes, we are interested. I argued with him about the price just to pretend, to show that we were interested. I managed to reduce the price to $350,000. Okay. I reported the thing to the minister and to the bishop, but otherwise I could inform no one else. The minister got 2 Italian experts for 2 days to Malta. There was very little they could do. They just told me to keep talking to them, and tried to trace the phone calls. Now, for 8 long months, they phoned me every day, sometimes three times a day. And they would give me a time limit. We'll give you till the end of the month, otherwise we'll take it to America, and so on and so forth. Sometimes they threatened me. At one time, they sent me a heavy envelope, which I was sure was a bomb. So I took it on the roof of the priory, tied the ends of the envelope and pulled it open, and it was just another tape. Anyhow, and this went on, and I went to the minister, and nobody could just sort of was really interested. I wrote a book later on and said at times it was easier to deal with the mafia than with ministers and monsignori, because nobody was really interested. So all I could do was to listen to them. And we had a young man trying to trace where the place they were phoning from. Okay, at the time we had a very primitive telephone system. You phoned the person and you got another one, and so on. And for, as I said, for 8 months, they couldn't trace. They would say, oh, the calls are coming from the north of Malta, could be anywhere. Finally, one of them was lucky, and he traced the phone calls to a factory, a shoe factory, in the center of Malta. And that was the important date, actually. It was on the 4th of August. And then I went to the ministry and got their workbooks. So they traced the calls on the 5th of June, 87. And I got their workbooks. And a week later, the minister introduced me to the police. Until then, we kept the police completely out. Okay. Now there had been an election. There had been a new government. A new party was elected, and they sort of took this opportunity, the return of the Caravaggio, as a sort of there's no business like show business. So they had helicopters going ground. They had a lot of cars, and finally, the whole operation was managed from my office. At the time, I was director at the National Museum in Republic Street. I had this policeman next to me. They phoned, as they did every day. They said, "Are you interested?" I said, "Yes." And I said, "I've got a lawyer next to me. Would you like to have a word with him?" They said, "Of course." And he said, "Okay, cut another piece." They used to send me bits of the canvas just to show me that they had it. So this policeman said, just cut another piece, put it somewhere. When we find it, we'll give you the money. Okay. Before this, something interesting happened. I was getting really worried. I was on my own. I started taking Valium. And once I protested with the Prime Minister, I said, "I can't stand this any longer. We're going to lose the painting, 8 long months dealing with them." And he said, "Okay, tell them that we've got the money." So obviously the government wasn't really interested. So when I told them they had the money, they said, "Okay, we'll bring it back from Italy." It had been sent to Italy, and when we told them we had the money, they could bring it back. The factory obviously exported a lot of leather and so on, so it was quite easy to get it outside and bring it back to Malta. So once it was in Malta, it was easier to retrieve it. Okay, so the day that they said that they wanted to make a contact, and they said they had dropped the piece of canvas in the letterbox at the Priory. Actually, they hadn't. Probably they noticed the plane going ground. And so the police just came down and arrested them. I've got a picture. This is one of the pieces of canvas that they used to send me. I still have them. And when I received it, it had a special kind of lining. So when I went to the minister and I said, I can swear this is a piece of our Caravaggio, okay? You can see the special lining that was used when it was restored the first time. Yes, this is my office when I was director. This is from where we sort of did the whole operation with the policeman next to me. There was a policeman next to me, a policeman on the helicopter. We committed a lot of mistakes. The man at the helicopter said they are taking something out of the factory. The man next to me said, stop them. I said, no, not until we know what it is. Then he said, cancel previous order. The man at the helicopter said, what previous order? He had brought with him 2 transmitters, one without a battery. It was a comedy of errors. Well, finally, the helicopter swooped down, was following this car. And as you can see in this photo, there's the policeman chasing the car and arresting the thief. He still had his piece of canvas, which he was supposed to have deposited in the letterbox at the Priory. It was still in his pocket. And strangely enough, he had a cutting from the Times of Malta reporting this theft of the Caravaggio 2 years before. In the picture, you also see that van with the red tap on top that was following the car all along, and it could be sort of seen by the helicopter, the man on the helicopter. Okay, anyhow, they arrested them. I was at the Priory really worried because I was expecting to find this piece of canvas they said they had put in the letterbox. It wasn't there. At 3 o'clock, somebody started knocking very loudly at the door, and I looked out of my window to stop him. It was obviously a policeman in civils, and he said, come along, we've caught them. So he rushed me to the police depot, and there were all the ministers or the people who took part in this retrieval. And that is I went there, I was sort of wearing a shirt, and there's the Prime Minister embracing me. Obviously, it was a great, great day. Yeah? So this is the scene at the depot. Left, you've got the army man who was on the helicopter. The man next to him was the policeman who was helping me. Then the minister who was not helping me, and another minister of culture and one of justice, and all the policemen. And there you see the canvas with the Caravaggio. It had obviously gone to Italy, rolled up in that Rexine, and it had come back from Italy. And this is the scene, the very, very happy scene at the police headquarters. That is, that's the Minister of Justice, as I said, who helped me a lot. And in the next picture, you see me being quite angry at my minister, who didn't help me that much. Okay, and this is the canvas as it was when it came back. You can see the missing bit and missing bits at the top. Those are the ones that I have. You have the cracks on the arm because when they rolled it the wrong way around. So a lot of Caravaggio painted very lightly, but then in the highlights, he put a lot of impasto, a lot of paint. So when the canvas was rolled, a lot of paint came off. You can see the damage on the arm. Okay, this is a political party opposite the museum where they put a poster saying, Father Zerafa, now that it has been recovered, see that you don't let them off, sort of. Now, once it was found, obviously, the government blew all its trumpets and so on. It was a great achievement for the police. Actually, the police did very little. And then I had to worry about the restoration because it was in a very bad state. Finally, I managed to, but I had a friend at the Italian embassy, and I really twisted his arms, and finally he promised to provide a military plane to take the picture to Rome to be restored, but no civilians were allowed. Finally, I convinced him to let me go. I had to sign a declaration that they wouldn't be responsible for anything that happened. And so we went to Rome. You can see the interior of the plane. There wasn't even a chair to sit on. And you see that flat box carrying the St. Jerome. So we got to Rome. It went to the restoration department, and they were supposed to restore it. A year and a half later, almost 2 years, I went up with the minister, the one in the blue suit there, expecting to see it restored or partly restored. And they had a great surprise. The young restorer there started talking about restoration and so on, blah, blah, blah. And then he said to his assistant, bring the box. And they brought the box and we opened it, and it was still there. They hadn't even opened the box after a year and a half. I was so annoyed, as you can see from the picture, that I just walked away and took a photo, because I thought this should be recorded. It was quite an anticlimax. Anyhow, so this is the St. Jerome in the box as we had sent it to Rome. This is interesting. This is a detail. This is the part of the face of St. Jerome. And you'll notice on the left-hand side, that was a missing bit, and they restored it. And they don't repaint it. They have a system of what they call tratteggio, very, very fine lines to fill in the empty space. So when you see the painting, as you probably saw it, you don't notice what is original and what is restored. But if you have a close-up like this, you can notice the parts that were restored, all right? So it was exhibited in Rome for a month, and then it came back, and everybody was happy ever after, right? So there's the Italian minister who came with us. It was a tragedy till the very end. When it was restored, we were at Ciampino airport. I went up with the minister to bring it back. They had put it in 2 boxes, 1 box inside another, and they were all drinking champagne there at the airport. And I realized, instead of sending the normal plane, since the Italian minister insisted on coming with it, they sent a special plane. And I realized that the huge box would not go into that plane. So at the very last minute, I had to remove it from its box and had to hold it by my side. It was a comedy, tragic comedy till the very, very end. Okay, so this is a copy I made of the St. Jerome. And I did it because it's a way to study a painting. And I presented it to the Italian embassy because they were the only people who really helped in the recovery and the restoration. Now, I wrote a book about it. At times it was easier to deal with the mafia than with ministers and monsignori. A monsignor in charge of St. John's phoned me and complained that I had informed the bishop, but had not informed him. So they weren't all that helpful, okay? And he does a good caricature here. If I had to paint politicians, it would be all beheadings, okay? That's in my book as well, okay? Now, the second bit was much happier. Somebody went into the oratory, went into St. John's, stole some silver, and then went into the oratory. The alarm went off, and for some reason, he slashed the beheading, the canvas, just underneath the signature, okay? So it was a problem to have it restored in Malta because it's so big and it's such an important painting. At that time, we were trying to Malta was trying to get into Europe. So they thought it would be good to send it to Rome or Florence to show that we are Europeans and make a splash. And I agreed to let it go because we couldn't do it here. And again, I had to seek the help of the Italian embassy, and they provided me with a vessel here, the Cassiopeia, which took me and the beheading to Livorno. This is the painting being downloaded at the harbor in Livorno. And then we drove very, very slowly down to Florence, that huge books. This is a lovely photo. This is me leading the lorry with the beheading, with the beheading, that huge box, to the main street of Florence, onto the Palazzo Vecchio, where it was going to be exhibited. Okay, so the Italians did a lot of publicity. We had these lovely posters, Caravaggio going from Malta to Florence, and then we had it exhibited in the Palazzo Vecchio, the Sala del Cinquecento, the main hall in Florence. That was a great, great occasion. They put up a lovely stand. On the side, we managed to borrow from the museum in Florence the Sleeping Cupid, which was painted in Malta, and the Maltese Knight. So we had them on this side, and we had the beheading there. And it was the central thing. People could visit it. The Maltese could visit it free. Others had to pay 1,000 lire and so on. But it was extremely popular in Florence. The aim was to send it to Rome. They had already published a booklet saying that the restoration would be in Rome. And I wasn't keen on Rome, first of all, because the painting wasn't in a condition to travel. And secondly, I've had a very sad experience with the restoration of the Saint Jerome. So this is Prime Minister Prodi, because there was a meeting with our Prime Minister and Prime Ministers of Europe. These are the knights celebrating, sort of receiving our Prime Minister in Florence. What was a stroke of luck, I was insisting it should be done in Florence. I knew all the restorers there, but they said we can't do it unless we have permission from our minister. So the painting was there, and I was having an interesting, funny conversation with Veltroni, who was the minister for culture at the time. And he was asking questions about Caravaggio and Malta, talking about Sgarbi, who had said something naughty about him and so on. And then he asked the question, where is it going to be restored? And I said, why not in Florence? And he went up on the platform there and he said, oh, we are so glad to be restoring a Caravaggio in Florence. Okay, and that was really a stroke of luck. The restorers were very happy. Unlike the people in Rome, they took it very seriously. They were working on a crucifix by Giotto, which they put aside to deal with our Caravaggio. They did a fantastic job. I used to go up to see them working. They came to Malta and so on. And as I said, it's had the best restoration it ever had, okay? So this is Veltroni announcing how happy he was. It was going to be in Florence. Then it was taken to the Carmine, an important church in Florence, because it has the Masaccio frescoes, the most important frescoes of the Renaissance. So on one side you have the Masaccio, on the other side you had the Caravaggio. So they put it up here, you see it going up. And next to it, they put a huge X-ray, the biggest X-ray they ever produced, to show what was underneath the surface painting. These are the restorers. They came to Malta. And this, again, the Italian government gave me another ship, the Vega, to bring it back to Malta. So that's a happy ending. In the case of the beheading, everything went very smoothly. No ministers were involved, no monsignori. So after the tragedy of the St. Jerome, it was a nice experience to be able to take the beheading to Florence and bring it back. And now you can enjoy it in its glory in the oratory of St. John. So this is the beheading being taken into St. John's. Watching, okay, it's huge, yeah? That's me there, looking very happy. This is the restored beheading. Yes, this is a lovely photo by my friend here. It's from Michelangelo, all right, Giovinazzi, yes. And this is interesting. This is the beheading in place, and there's a lunette on top representing the Battle of St. Elmo, painted by a minor artist, that used to be above the Caravaggio. When Preti restored the oratory, put in all those decorations and so on, gilding, he removed that painting. So we had it restored and exhibited at it here. This is an inferior painting, a lunette, representing the Battle of St. Elmo during the episode of the Great Siege. Okay, this is there's Mickey giving a lecture in the oratory. This is an exhibition of documents which we had. This is an interesting woodcut which represents a defrocking of a knight. They would put his red mantle on a sword and pull it away, and he would be expelled from the order. Probably it represents the expulsion of Caravaggio himself. Okay, I think that is all. Now, may I have some questions, please?
Thank you so much. That was superb.
No,
okay. Now, the interesting part is to have some questions, please. Make them as difficult as you can.
We will stop sharing now so that you
can. Yeah, and I can show them something, yes.
Oh, yes. Wait a bit. We're still, we'll stop sharing first so you can see something here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
This is the book. I'll send you a copy, which I wrote. It's based on my diary, because I kept a diary, and every day I would write what they told me, what I told them, and so on. You can see it.
Yes.
Very detailed. You can't read the handwriting. I can read it myself. But it was very good, because when I wrote the book, I mean, nobody could deny it. There was somebody who tried to give his version. He was very economical with the truth. So I had it published again. Somebody with added some chapters telling the true story. Okay. Now this is the tape that the thief sent me. I wish I could.
Right.
And this is one of the pieces of canvas. All right, with the lining. This is a tape recorder. I used to record everything I said to them. Okay, so I think that's the. One interesting thing I forgot to tell you. When it was all over, the policeman who was helping me said, "I've got news for you." He said, "You are going to be the first person to be kidnapped in Malta." And he told me that somebody had been offered £5,000 to kidnap me during the exchange. All right. At that time, I laughed it off because I thought it was all over and the thieves were caught and so on. But he said, it's not funny, because this man is a very dangerous person because he deals in drugs and weapons. And unfortunately, he was assassinated a couple of years ago. And the young man who stole one of there were 3 men involved. One of them was given an overdose and he died as well. The 3 people involved all died. So it was that's the sad part of the whole story.
Questions.
Now, questions.
Marius, thank you so much for that talk. As you say, we thoroughly enjoyed it, but let's have some questions. If any of the members would like to ask you questions.
Yes, please. Come on.
Peter, does anybody want to ask questions?
There was one in the chat box from Lindsay. It says, did Caravaggio use the earth red as a foundation color before applying the other color in his compositions?
Yes, in fact, I meant to show you a picture, but we removed it because it would have taken too long. I believe, I mean, there are various ideas, but I believe that he prepared his canvas with Venetian red, okay? And then he would pass a transparent black over it to get a rich black. When you see the black in the background of a Caravaggio, it's not just sort of ordinary black, it's a rich brown. And he obtained that by having this red preparation, all right? Then with the back end of the brush, he would scratch certain signs, usually starting with the ears, and he would place the figures on his canvas. And then he would start painting. If he didn't like it, as I showed you, he would just paint on top of it, all right? But the background, that rich brown, I think he obtained by having a red underpainting, Venetian red, okay?
Thank you, sir. Peter, anybody else asking questions?
No, that was the only one in the chat box. So if anyone else wants to speak up.
Yes, please. Hello.
Yeah.
This is Alec. I wonder if the chronology of the paintings, some of the paintings, is correct. And that is because you mentioned that he paints the same old lady, on different paintings at different times. But I wonder if it is correct, because he must have had a really fantastic memory to remember in such a detail the person after so many years.
Yeah,
Do you
okay.
think it is correct, the chronology?
Yes. Now, as regards his paintings, which he did in Rome, mind you, he didn't lead a long life, or I didn't have a long life. So, I mean, his period in Rome is quite short, all right? And we know, I mean, this is documented, that he painted a number of people, we know them by name, especially this girlfriend, Lena. Okay, so the pictures that he did in Rome are definitely portraits of this woman. He must have had a good memory, because even with other works later, there's the Saint Catherine of Alexandria, people think it is Lena as well. As regards memory, I mentioned that he painted the old woman in the picture in St. John's, all right, the beheading, and then he painted the same old lady in the burial of St. Lucy. Okay, definitely he didn't take that old lady with him, so he must have this fantastic memory that he could paint someone, and then reproduce the same features again. I mean, this happens with quite a number of artists who could do this. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As regards the chronology, I mean, what I said is not sort of absolutely certain, in the sense that people give an attribution, they give a date to a painting, they don't all agree on whether it was an early or a later work, right?
Yeah.
Because they are not all the ones who belong to a collection, we would have information about them. With others, we don't.
Yeah.
All right. So that is why every now and then a new Caravaggio appears, and there's a huge controversy about it and so on, because there are no records of it. Okay. The ones in Malta, obviously, they are well recorded, so we know when they were painted and for whom, and so on and so forth. Right? We know certain families that he painted, right? The Borghese family, the Mattei family. So we know that the Christ in the Garden, which is in Dublin, the Supper at 10 Mouse. They're all the same size, all painted for the Mattei family. All right. For others, we don't know for whom they were commissioned. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Come on.
Graham,
Yes, if you have tears, prepare to shed them. No.
Graham,
I think
Yes.
that's it, I think.
any more questions for Father Marius?
I don't think there are at the moment, David.
That's all right. I think
I
Good
have
news,
one more if
I'm
you
not-
don't mind. May I ask one more if you don't mind?
Come
Please?
on. Yeah, sure.
The St. Lawrence, this last painting that apparently was found in an attic, the martyrdom of St. Lawrence.
Yes, yes.
Do you think it is?
Yeah.
Do you think it is a Caravaggio or not? Because there is that.
Look, books have been written about attributions, all right? My friend says that the duty of an art historian is to make one attribution in his life and spend the rest of his life defending it, all right? There are lots of paintings by attributed to Caravaggio about which people don't agree at all, all right? Some of them we know who commissioned them. They've always been assigned to Caravaggio, but then there are lots of others. I mean, there's a Caravaggio coming out practically every year, right? There's a martyrdom of St. Lawrence at the Jesuit church in Rome. It made a lot of fuss, now it's been forgotten, all right? There was a still life that people were trying to sell as a Caravaggio. It made a lot of fuss, then it disappeared. Okay, so there are lots and lots of question marks, all right? And I mean, there was a series of Mary Magdalenes, all looking very, very much the same, all right? And people sort of were giving attributions. There's a famous historian in Mina Gregori in Florence, and she felt that one of them was the original. The problem is that some of them are repetitions by Caravaggio, because we know that sometimes, I mean, lots of copies, but then there are what are called replicas. When he painted the lute player at the Hermitage, he repeated it for the one which is at the Metropolitan, okay? Doing one painting, and then he himself, probably because it was popular, he did a copy or a version of it, and then it's the job of the historians, the critics, to fight over it and decide whether it is or is not a Caravaggio. Okay. Recently, a painting was discovered by Sir Dennis Mann at Hampton Court, and there's Christ with his two disciples. It's a lovely, lovely painting, right? And it's only a few years ago that, and I think it is a very good Caravaggio.
Yeah.
So this is something that goes on, and
Okay, I think we can have one last question from Carla, if you'd like to ask your question, Carla.
yes,
Hi, thank you very much for the wonderful and very, very interesting presentation. I really loved it. And I was wondering, just out of curiosity, sorry, my accent, I am Italian, so I
That's
hope
right.
my English is not too bad.
I'm half Italian. I teach in Italian in Rome. Eh?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Molto bene, but I think I should speak English too.
Right.
Yes,
Yes, I
please.
just wanted to know, have Caravaggio's paintings all been X-rayed? And do they always show what I think they are called pentimenti?
Pentimenti.
Yes.
Yes.
So the changes you wanted to make in the composition.
Most of them. The beheading was X-rayed. As I said, they made the biggest X-ray ever produced in Florence, and they found very, very small, very tiny changes, which means that he painted it and he liked what he saw. In the case of the martyrdom of St. Matthew in San Luigi dei Francesi in Rome, it's a completely different picture. Okay, so I mean, having an X-ray, you know, whenever you take a picture for restoration, they take a photo, they have an X-ray, you have infrared to see what's underneath the painting, all right? You have ultraviolet to see whether it has been retouched, all right? You have tangent light because the brush strokes sometimes indicate that there was a change and so on. But as I said, those, obviously all of them have been X-rayed, and with most of them, they were just sort of straightforward. In the case of San Luigi dei Francesi, it's a completely different picture altogether. Okay, but no, that's the first thing that happens once a picture goes to a museum. I did it myself. Yes, Joven here with me. Somebody brought me a still life with oranges and a pigeon on top, and I started cleaning it, and a toe appeared, no? And I took it to Crockford to have an X-ray, and I realized there was a figure underneath. They said, okay, go ahead. I removed the still life, all the oranges, and a new painting came out. It was Jacob fighting the angel. So one of the wings of the pigeon were in fact a part of the wings of the angel. Okay, that happens quite often, that if you don't want a sort of a sacred subject and you want something that goes with your dining room, you get somebody to paint oranges on top of Jacob and the angel. Okay.
Thank you very much. Do you think there is still some Caravaggio around to be discovered?
Sorry?
Do you think there is still a painting by Caravaggio in the world that has not been discovered yet?
I'm sure, especially as my friend here will tell you, there's a whole period before he became popular with his works at San Luigi dei Francesi, when he was painting for artists and he was producing saints and still lifes, 3 a day, 3 heads a day, okay? And we don't know where they are. So every now and then something appears and somebody comes to me or sends me a photo and said, I found the Caravaggio. And I say,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sure there are lots of Caravaggios there. Here in Malta, we've got one which is in a private collection. It's St. John, the young St. John at the fountain. There are 4 or 5 versions of it. I saw an exhibition in Rome once at Stazione Termini, where they had another version of it. Longhi was a great expert of Caravaggio, because Caravaggio was famous. All Europe imitated Caravaggio, in Naples, in Spain especially. No? Then he was forgotten. Then in 1951, Longhi organized a huge exhibition in Milan. And since then, a new book, a new film, a new whatever it is about Caravaggio comes out every week, every year. All right. So it's not surprising that other works may come out. All right. A lot of copies, including my own. Okay. But no, history of art is like that. It's a sort of a life of discovery and discussion. All right, artists, historians arguing among themselves whether it's a Caravaggio or a Caravaggio. Okay, you understand in Italian? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
There's one thing I must do this evening, Father Marius. The secretary who has served us so well as the Friends of the Letter is moving from Chichester, so we are presenting her with a bouquet of flowers.
Fair enough.
Hold up. And so at the same evening that you are giving your talk, Rachel, it is her last time with us, so we have given her a bunch of flowers this evening.
Lovely, lovely.
Very lovely flowers.